They rejected him. Not with cruelty, not with spectacle, just a simple closing of a door that used to open. He heard the latch slip, and the word no settled over his chest like iron. The old version of him wanted to speak, to explain, to argue his worth until the air surrendered. But tonight he did not chase. He sat with the candle and listened to the war inside. He remembered what the emperor wrote when the frontiers were burning. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Marcus said it softly across centuries, and the room seemed to receive it. The mind is the battleground. The outside is only weather. So he practiced the first drill of quiet courage. Drill 1. The gate. He pictured the entrance to a fortress, his attention as the drawbridge, his breath as the guard. Inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 6. On each exhale, he lowered the bridge only for what served him. Clean air, clear thought, steady pulse. All else, memories that bite, fantasies that sting, remained on the other side of the moat. The rain softened and a steadier rhythm replaced it. His pulse, not theirs. He wanted to reach for the phone. He wanted to draft something noble, something flawless, something that would turn no into maybe. But Seneca's lantern swung over the table of his mind. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Reality was simple. A choice had been made. Imagination was dangerous. It disguised begging as bravery and self-abandonment as romance. He looked at the candle. It did not plead with the wind. It protected its flame. That was the second drill. Drill 2. The frame. He framed rejection not as a verdict on his essence, but as a report about fit. A door that was never his to force. A room that was never meant to keep him. Identity and outcome separated like oil and water. He wrote it down. This is information, not identity. Writing the sentence was like tightening armor straps. Beyond the walls, the city lived. Laughter in alleyways, sandals on wet stone, the clatter of carts. Life did not pause for his pain, and that was not cruelty. It was a compass. He still had roads to build. Drill 3. The fast, a fast from reaction. 24 hours without messages, without investigating their life, without auditioning for a role already cast. The fast was not a game. It was a guard post. No man is free who is not master of himself, Epictetus reminded him. Freedom began with what he refused to feed. He remembered a frontier story, a young standard-bearer who once ran after a taunt thrown from the darkness and nearly led his cohort into an ambush. The centurion's correction was concise: hold the line. Noise invites arrows. Silence protects positions. Tonight he held the line for himself. He tidied the small room the way soldiers tidy a camp before dawn. A clean cup, a folded cloak, the sandals placed parallel. Order outside helps order inside. Then he put both hands on the table and named the truths he could control. Wake time, water, food, movement, study, work. The words he would and would not say. It felt like gathering scattered coins into one purse, but the mind, clever, hungry, tested him again. What if they never miss you? What if they forget? The questions arrived like smoke through a crack. He stood and opened the window to the cold. Breath turned to mist. He did not answer the questions. He answered his posture. Shoulders down, jaw soft, eyes level with the horizon. He spoke to himself the way a seasoned general speaks to a young soldier after a lost skirmish, with dignity and direction. You did not lose yourself. You lost an outcome. Your task has not changed. Build the person you promised to become. And so he listed the day's marches. Walk under the sky before the city wakes. Read a page that strengthens judgment. Not fantasy sweat once, proof that the body remembers its strength. Speak with a friend who tells the truth. Work. The craft that no door can close. Every line was a plank in a bridge that led away from the swamp of rumination. He realized that silence was not emptiness. It was direction. It turned his momentum inward where real repairs are made. Would his quiet hurt them? Maybe. Maybe not. That was a weather question, not a command question. His silence was not a knife. It was a boundary. If they looked for his signal and found none, it was not cruelty. It was clarity. Warmth returned to its rightful owner. He remembered another sentence from the emperor, one that felt like a lamp. The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts, not on replies, not on chances, on thoughts. So he chose a better thought and polished it until it reflected him. My value is not a debate. My discipline is my proof. The candle burned lower and steadier. The drums of the storm slowed to a dignified march. He stacked his notes, tied them with string, and set tomorrow's cloak on the chair. He blew the flame and stood in the dark, surprised to find that darkness did not feel like absence anymore. It felt like a vow. He would not chase what declined him. He would not explain his dignity. He would not confuse reaction with response. He would meet the morning as a man under command, his own. Outside, the rain finally stopped. Inside, the war did too. And in that rare silence, the kind you only earn, he understood why the masters of old spoke softly. Because real strength does not need to shout to be heard. The rejection has passed. The words have faded into memory. Now there is only the echo, your silence. At first, it feels unnatural, doesn't it? The space where messages once flowed feels empty, too wide, too quiet. But slowly that quiet becomes something else. It becomes weight. It becomes presence. What they once thought was absence now follows them everywhere. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." And now, the color of your thoughts has changed. It is no longer desperate red or anxious gray. It has become something rarer, calm gold. You have stopped explaining yourself. You have stopped offering your energy as proof of your worth. And in that stillness, the world begins to tilt. The first stirring. First, they do not notice. Your silence seems ordinary, temporary. They expect the old rhythm, the quick reply, the late-night check-in, the inevitable apology that once came too easily. But the hours become days. The days stretch into weeks, and suddenly your silence begins to speak. They hear it in the emptiness of their notifications, in the quiet of their room, in the way laughter doesn't echo the same. They start to check their phone for a name that no longer appears. Seneca once wrote, "He who is brave is free." You are free now, not because they left, but because you no longer need them to return. Your silence, once uncomfortable, has become your sword and shield. It cuts through illusions and it protects your peace. They used to think your attention was endless, but now, deprived of it, they begin to see its true weight. They start to realize that your kindness was not weakness, it was generosity. And generosity, once withdrawn, leaves a shadow. The mirror effect. Here is the paradox. When you stop chasing someone who undervalued you, they are forced to confront what they truly lost. At first, they distract themselves. New faces, new routines, new noise. But beneath every distraction, your silence hums like a quiet drum. It's not punishment. It's reflection. Because silence does what words cannot. It returns their actions to them. Epictetus said, "It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Your reaction, measured, calm and wordless, is the purest demonstration of control. Silence teaches them what noise never could. It shows them what it feels like to be unheard. It shows them how heavy neglect can become when the other side no longer absorbs it. They begin to remember your patience, your loyalty, your steady presence, the things they dismissed when they thought they had endless time. But now your quiet is a mirror that reflects their choices back at them. And that reflection is not kind. The turning point in their private hours, when the distractions fade, they start to wonder, did I misjudge them? Were they stronger than I thought? They replay moments where you gave them grace. They realize how often they mistook that grace for dependence. Now, in your absence, they meet their own dependence for validation, for control, for ego, and that realization hurts. Not because you've done anything cruel, but because you've done nothing at all. The Stoics called this discipline of inaction apatheia, not apathy, but the calm born from self-mastery. You are no longer pulled by the tides of other people's storms. You stand like stone and it terrifies them. They once believed your silence would crumble into pleading. Instead, it deepened into stillness, and that stillness became strength. Now they find themselves replaying the last words they said to you. The tone, the moment, the arrogance of assuming you'd wait. They hear those words in their own voice, and for the first time, they sound cruel. That's the gift of silence. It amplifies truth, the transformation. But this is not about them anymore, is it? Because while they wrestle with regret, you have changed. Your silence has turned inward, not as a cage, but as a crucible. You've met yourself again. The parts that waited, the parts that gave too much, the parts that were afraid of being forgotten. You've listened to your thoughts long enough to separate the lies from the lessons. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." You've learned that silence isn't about withholding, it's about transcending. You do not mirror their rejection with bitterness. You mirror it with grace. And now you no longer seek to be understood, you seek to understand yourself. You build, you grow, you move. The silence that once felt like punishment has become meditation,